Welcome to Advancing Healthcare Through Simulation. Today we're bringing you a special on-location episode from Translating Innovation. A-MEDICO meets Alberta MedTech industry, an exclusive event where industry leaders, researchers, and post-secondary trainees come together to foster collaboration, spark innovation, and tackle the most pressing challenges in advanced medical technologies. A-MEDICO was made possible through a major innovation fund grant from the Alberta Ministry of Technology and Innovation, led by the University of Calgary in collaboration with the University of Alberta, University of Lethbridge, Deer Polytechnic, and CAMS at NAIT. A-MEDICO includes a network of researchers, students, ecosystem collaborators, and industry partners who are collectively driving medical device innovation forward in Alberta. A-MEDICO is proud to host this gathering, uniting key voices across Alberta's innovation ecosystem. In this episode, we speak with 5 representatives from across the ecosystem, each playing a vital role in shaping and strengthening Alberta's medical device landscape. Together, they demonstrate how a connected, collaborative network can accelerate innovation and help build a stronger future for healthcare in our province. So I have here with me Ben Millen. He's the Vice President of Design and Product at Tangent Design Engineering. Ben, thank you so much for joining me here today.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, so we're going to just fire away with the first question then.
Let's go for it.
So what role does your company play in turning early scientific ideas into real medical products?
Yeah, Tangent occupies the space probably from very early proof of concept or proof of phenomena, even for a device that somebody might develop on a lab bench or in a garage in a less glamorous sort of situation, right through to commercializable, deliverable products. So again, we lose sight of that because we're surrounded by so many of these great products. We think that it's easy to sort of ignore that part of it.
Right.
But we just make sure that whatever that first device or that first prototype is something that connects with the users, is usable, whether it's by patients or clinicians, that the process is repeatable, that the design is robust, so that it doesn't fail. That's a critical part, that it doesn't hurt anybody once it enters the market. And then, of course, the regulatory side of it too. So making sure that it meets the applicable standards when we do go into a manufacturer. So it's kind of translating from sort of being able to create one to creating thousands or tens of thousands of something, and also position it in a way that meets the market and the people that need to use it and passes all the necessary regulatory.
It's like a very necessary service for many people here today.
Yeah.
So for someone unfamiliar with manufacturing, what does it take to produce these high-quality medical devices or components?
It's a great question. There's a lot, as you can imagine. I suppose it begins with a very clear understanding of the product requirements. And those come from all kinds of different places. So some of that is nicely defined in standards and that sort of thing. So we can research those standards if it's a class of devices that already exist. Some of it is right from the device context. So talking to the users or clinicians or whoever to gather kind of the fundamentals of what that thing has to do. And some of the constraints, sort of from the environment that it's entering. There's other things too, of course, technical and material limitations or requirements, things like biocompatibility. Just making sure that things work well or are safe to use with humans. All of that then translates into sort of the nebulous realm of doing design. So from those requirements, we end up sort of proposing some kind of a solution, or what we would call an embodiment, which is the first sort of crack at how might this thing exist and enter the world. Mm-hmm. You do some broad work there to sort of test various kind of versions of the thing, and then when you land on one that has the most promise, you go into detailed design. So you go through all the necessary steps to make sure that all the tolerances are correct and that things are mating and matching up correctly, and that safety is taken care of, and again, the device isn't going to fail, and that not only is it ready to be made once, but it can be made, thousands and tens of thousands of times. And then you go through sort of optimizing those things further. So once you have that kind of robust first one, then you start to optimize it for mass manufacture, and then ultimately communicate with or work with a manufacturer or a set of manufacturers to make sure what's coming off of the line and being assembled is per the design, and it's actually answering those requirements.
Maintaining that high quality standard.
Exactly. I mean, that's a big part of it too. So, during that design process, you sort of lay out sort of the minimum performance requirements, and you make sure that those are all met, and that things coming out of manufacturing are meeting the requirements and performing in a necessary way, which is sounds trivial, but is often very complex in its own way. So.
I can imagine. You summarized it quite nicely, but I'm sure there's many steps and many iterations of those types of processes.
It probably sounds reasonable, but it's there's a lot to it.
I bet. So maybe tell us a little bit, how do you work with inventors or startups who may be building their first product and new to this type of experience?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, and that's something that's really changed. Kind of in the, I suppose it's been about 20 years that we've been in business, and it's something over 10 that I've been involved in it. Very early on, we do a lot of work, more work than you might expect, and sometimes more than the early stage innovators or inventors are expecting, around things that don't directly pertain to the technology itself. So of course, there's technical requirements, and usually that sort of like technological innovation is kind of at the center of things, at the very early stage. But what we try to do is like gain an understanding of the broader context around that device, and sort of like how it's going to enter the world, eventually, kind of at the end of that process that I just described. That's a very lengthy, costly, and risky endeavor to go down that. So we want to make sure that whatever we end up kind of executing on is really going to land in the market, land with the users, and effectively be the solution that everybody imagines it to be. So we spend a lot of time at that early stage, looking kind of like beyond sort of the boundary of the device itself. Looking at sort of like the various stakeholders that are involved, whether that's the users, the users of the device, or the person who might have the device used on them in some cases. Further out to sort of regulators or purchasing bodies, kind of like within institutions and that sort of thing, and anybody kind of around the device. Again, we've already heard it today. Just making sure that there's a good product market fit, that it is actually answering, a solution that the market, or it's answering a problem that the market actually has, and that's not just the case of like we've invented something that we think is really amazing, but it doesn't actually, in its current manifestation, it doesn't actually solve a problem, that can lead to a viable business. So we try to kind of identify all of those assumptions and de-risk them very, very early on, and just be very clear about what it is that we're developing. And then we sort of embark upon that journey that I described a second ago. And the approach that we try to take is just to identify the biggest sort of like, the most critical parts of the design, but also the biggest risks that are associated with the technology, or with the embodiment, or with that sort of pathway, and identify those early, and try and find a way to test them and de-risk them without having to get all the way to a prototype. So very, very often people, come in and they say, well, I just need a prototype so that I can sort of show it to these larger companies, or, whatever, investors, and then I'm going to be wildly successful. Like I've already said, it's a very costly endeavor to get to that first prototype. So what we try to do is just identify, the big risks along the way, and kind of in order, find ways to mitigate those risks and move beyond them, just to, continue to assure, ultimately the client or the team that we can move forward, and there is a viable path forward. And you just sort of work through that until eventually you start reaching the later stages. So if it's done well, everything kind of comes together. The product vision, investors as they're needed, other partners, sort of early adopters, all kind of coalesce around this thing, kind of as it's entering the world, and there are no big surprises or no big gotchas. The regulatory is the other one that I didn't mention in there, but
Right.
we take care of that too.
A huge piece to that. Well, I imagine there would be common challenges that you've seen over the years
Yeah.
with your experience. What are some of those, and how can they try to scale from that lab prototype to the manufacturable product at the end to kind of navigate some of those challenges that may come up?
Yeah, I mean it's unique. It's unique in every situation and with every device. So I don't know if there's a broad answer. I think one of the biggest ones is always access to funding. And just making sure that the project is able to kind of like maintain some momentum. Again, the way that these things work and just the nature of non-dilutive funding early on. Things move a certain distance and then the project pauses for a while, and then like another sort of grant will come through or another sort of round of funding will come through, and you're able to sort of like move it further. And in that time, sometimes the landscape changes, or certain technologies become more available, and these things. So, I would say like one of the biggest things is just sort of maintaining that momentum and actually kind of being able to follow through that arc consistently with enough enough funding or capital to be able to do it. I wish I had a great answer for that. I think a big part of sort of what I just spoke to, just around kind of de-risking various parts of it, is a very helpful way of going through that. Ideally, you're building a case for the technology and for the device as you move through those those various iterations or rounds of development. Again, so I'm hopeful, and I think that our approach to it is useful that way. But as I say, like I think broadly, like looking at sort of like what are the biggest risks or biggest gotchas or things that are either present or kind of like going to come into the future, and just running almost small experiments to see if you can get underneath those things, whether it's just a quick pilot study with a mock-up of your device, so like actually get into the setting where it will be used and just like test something that may be sort of like an ugly prototype, or something that looks great but isn't functional, just to sort of see if it's landing with the people that'll use it, and the people who may ultimately purchase it, and some of those activities.
I would imagine that would be the most valuable piece, is gathering that feedback and helping narrow the focus of
Yeah.
the next steps.
I'm a huge believer in it, which shouldn't be a surprise given that I come from the design and product side. I find it's often very difficult to advocate for it. The focus, and I'm not sure if it's something unique to Alberta and this climate, or if it has something to do broadly with just people developing these types of technology. The exciting part is developing the technology and the product, and there's a real tendency to sort of like want to focus on making the first good one, and it's difficult to have or develop the I don't know if it's like resilience or something, but it's like a willingness to have the market tell you that's not right. You love this little thing that you've been developing, and to put it out in the world and possibly have people say like, yeah, it's close, but it's not exactly doing what I'd like. Like you say, it's incredibly valuable. And the earlier you can identify those things in ways that you can kind of change the direction that you're going, the better. But it tends to be difficult to convince people to spend, I would say, enough time doing that work, because, as you say, it's incredibly valuable, but it's also, you have to be a little bit resilient and willing to adjust your course.
A little bit vulnerable as
Vulnerable
well.
is the word, yeah. That's a good one. Yeah.
What would you say, what kind of technologies or capabilities does your company provide that help accelerate the medtech development?
Yeah, that's a good and very interesting question. There are lots of technologies, and the last decade has been really exciting for things that help us get to you know ultimately get to a commercializable product sooner. It's not a very exciting answer in terms of technology, but one of our biggest assets is the framework, like the product development framework that we've developed internally. Which is probably a variation on many others out there, but basically just making sure that as you progress through those steps, uh, you're kind of answering the critical questions fast. You're able to establish an understanding of what the risks are very early. You know what you're building, at an early point. Um, I feel like that's not the answer that anybody wants, so I'll give you some other ones. Obviously we're making great use of 3D printing. That's been a huge change and something that's evolved, incredibly rapidly, even over the last 5 years. So, for instance, to be able to go from a sketch that an industrial designer might come up with to sort of like the first manifestation of like a physical device that somebody can hold, that's already starting to show some of the characteristics of that final thing. You can do that now in an afternoon. Whereas previously that was an enormous effort.
Right.
And somebody would have to go into the basement and carve it out of foam and do all sorts of, and it would still be worse. It's like now you've got something that's very, very close to the ultimate device at the end. So you can kind of try that on with people, as I was just describing, in a way that's very convincing. Which is very valuable again to my side of things. On the product development side of things, having a physical thing in front of you rather than just kind of being in CAD, you can immediately sort of like test how things are going to fit together and like spot problems in the design and that kind of thing and do early tests. So that's been that's been a major development in a technology that we use extensively, I would say. There's a lot of simulation tools that continue to improve. So again, it's not very sexy, but there's lots of things sort of like around electromagnetic emissions and that sort of thing that we need to take care of on the electrical side, so we can do simulations around that without having to actually build things that help us spot problems early. Again, in mechanical systems, lots of uh, you know, computational fluid dynamics simulations, so fluid flow simulations and that kind of thing. All of that helps us, you know, improve on the designs before building that ultimate prototype. And it's always kind of like, do we use it? Because there's effort and time required to set up a simulation. Sometimes it's quicker just to build it and prototype it with those technologies that I was just describing. Other times, if it's going to be very costly to build the end product, then running simulations can help us kind of like find any problems with the design and iterate on them sooner. So those are probably two of the bigger ones that we're using. Yeah.
I mean, don't sell yourself short. I know that some of our listeners are very excited about process and keeping things on track. So those are
Yeah.
some great examples.
Okay. Happy to talk about process.
Bet. And then just to round things out, what advice would you give to new innovators looking to prepare their product for manufacturing and scale?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm riffing on a theme here.
Yeah.
Um, I think the best advice that I would have to give, or I could give anybody, would be to not focus solely on the device itself and manufacturing and scaling. And I can speak to those things more directly, but don't ignore product market fit. Don't ignore your users. Try and identify those things or problems with those things and the regulatory stuff very early on. The sooner the better. So again, getting to manufacture seems like a minor step. Going back to the very beginning of our conversation, it seems like it's not a big deal. It's a huge deal. It's not like prototyping software where you can kind of get something up and running, quickly. It's like, your first prototype is already well on the path to manufacture. So try and find any weaknesses in not just your design and embodiment, but sort of the larger strategy sooner. so that you can change course. The sooner you can adjust your plan, the better. Um, in terms of product development, um, what could I say? Like again, that risk-based approach. So figure out sort of like the one or two features that are kind of critical to its operation, and map those to sort of like the technological requirements of what's going on, and just make sure that that you're matching up with sort of like what it needs to do, and that the technology that's answering those things is super robust. Um, and I suppose just kind of go down the list from there.
Right.
Have a good development partner. I suppose that's another good one.
I
So
suppose,
yeah,
yes, collaboration is
yeah.
key. And I think, if there is a theme, then certainly those are the important things that people need to be focusing on. So thank you
I
so
hope so.
much for
Yeah,
sharing your wisdom, your experience, and joining us on the podcast here today.
it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So next up, I'm joined by Stephanie Dang. Stephanie is a graduate student in biomedical engineering at the University of Calgary. Welcome, Stephanie.
Guys, thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah, we're really interested to hear. I'll go right to the first question here. What inspired you to pursue MedTech, and what problem in healthcare motivates your work?
If I'm really being honest, when you're an undergraduate student, you don't know much about the world out there. So I think for us, when we were in school, we would just take classes, do grading classes, and then think of like, okay, applying for jobs. And then for us, most of us in STEM, we would think, okay, I can be a doctor, I can be a professor. So very mainstream, very traditional career path. But yeah, so in my third year and last year of undergraduate studies, I had a chance to work with my PI, who would just give me a project and do well in them. But with that project, I had a chance to talk to him and the senior scientists in our labs, and a lot of them give me ideas. They tell me about their problems with the world. They tell me what they're trying to solve, and they give me ideas. And with that, I got to learn about okay, these then that's when I can refine what I know and then what I'm more interested in, and decide to stay in medtech. And for now, I think the problems that motivates me to pursue medtech would be the really long hours spent in the lab for foundational research in order to develop tools and devices for medtech. Um, I think you have to spend a lot of hours just growing. Let's say with infectious disease, you have to grow your organisms in the lab, and then with like cancer research, any tissue research, you need tissue culture. So with that, you have to. It takes a lot of labor and hours just spending on growing them, taking care of them. So so my problem is trying to tackle that. And so my project, it works on like automations of okay, let's say if this process is taking hours of my labor work, is there a way I can automate a machine to do the work for me? And with the time spent, I can learn more. I can organize my ideas. I can go talk to people, network, and I think that's the problem that would motivates me to keep going.
Sounds like a very valuable area to focus on and be able to broaden your expertise and continue to work in other areas if you have that automation in place. So,
Yes, yes.
makes a lot of sense to me. What skills are you building right now that you think are most important for future medtech innovators?
Right now, of course, the hard skills, so skills in the lab, the knowledge, because of course you have to be competent in what you do. But aside from that, I'm very, very interested in networking, building my soft skills, so how to talk to people, how to meet the right people who can help me advance in my careers. And those skills are not usually taught in schools. When you take courses, you never really learn a lot. So uh, you learn that through exposure, and you learn that through talking to your mentors, finding people to talk to, and just through exposure to like people, and then learn more about them. So my skills right now, the skills I'm most interested in learning right now is, okay, if I have an idea, how do I know if my idea is worth, how do I know if the problem matters? And how do I know if my idea, how do I convince people to invest in me? How do I convince people that my idea would work? Right? And then with that, so sometimes you have idea and then you don't know, and you cannot communicate it with your end users. It would be useless. So the skills, yeah. So just through talking to investors, talking to your end users, that's when you get the exposure, and they will tell you, and then from that you start to refine your ideas and improve your products, and yeah,
Sounds like today's event would be a great opportunity to connect with other
exactly.
researchers and hear from their experience as well. So,
Yep.
is there anyone you're hoping to connect with today or anyone you've met already?
I'm hoping to connect with people from on the funding side.
Right.
Yes, because well, when you have a product and you have these ideas, and of course you need the resources, and the best way is to find people who can fund your ideas and talk to them, try and convince them that hey, like this is what I do, this is cool and it's worth it.
Yeah, and you'll get a chance to practice those communication skills through those.
Exactly.
Has there been anything that has surprised you through your experience so far about working at the intersection of engineering, biology, and healthcare?
Oh yes, so many surprises. So I am right now in my graduate program is biomedical engineering, but my undergrad was in biochemistry. And so I was in main very fundamental science, like fundamental biology. And so all I know, I'm in this little bubble of biology knowledge, very at the molecular level, like very tiny, very niche knowledge and ideas and things like that. But on the technology side, so when I started joining the engineering program, then I started to realize, okay, there are some skills deficiency here and knowledge deficiency because I'm not an expertise. I would be an expertise in biology, but I don't know much about the engineering side. So that is when I get to connect with engineers, and through talking to engineers, and then I get to learn from them because I don't have those skills. But then by working with them in our project, the engineers doesn't they don't know much about biology, and that's where my skills come in, and I have something to offer. So it's really surprising how multidisciplinary and how collaborative that like the intersection of like science, engineering, and healthcare is, because that's when you know that not everyone knows everything, but then each person, then we have something to offer, an idea, a piece of knowledge. Yeah, we have something to offer, and then from then we work together and then just work toward or the goal that is the problem that we're all interested in solving.
And I would imagine those diverse perspectives bring, new
Exactly.
ideas, new pieces to the puzzle, so to speak, right?
Exactly. Sometimes you have one way of thinking, it may be biased, and sometimes you need those others' perspectives to say, okay, like someone else is doing something and it works as well, so maybe you can like change your mind, and then just go like trying to find the directions that gets you to where you want to be. Yeah.
What opportunities or resources have been most valuable in accelerating your training and development so far?
I think the opportunities to meet people with diverse skills is has been super valuable, and also having the platform or the space to bring your ideas into a working prototype. And so so I work with my supervisor, who they would have an engineering space, they would have laboratory place, and those ones sometimes you have the ideas and then you don't have the resources. Let's say you want to quickly build this machine, prototype this, and most of the time you have to like contact people with resources and trying to find the people who has the right tools that you need. And I think as an undergrad or like before I started my graduate school, we don't have those resources. Most of them would be ideas that we have in mind, and then hopefully you talk to a supervisor, and then they offer what you need. But yeah, having the space right now uh, to brainstorm my ideas and then just quickly bring that ideas. For example, 3D print a quick prototype to work on it. Like I think having that freedom has been super valuable. And also having the opportunities to meet people who know what you need to know. For example, if I'm facing this problem, I don't know who to go to, and sometimes reading online, like like in libraries or like resources, they may be valuable. You can find what you need, but sometimes you just need another brain to give you,
Bounce ideas off
to
of and
bounce ideas off, or like you need someone to point out like, hey, like this is the problem that you need to solve. This is the tool that you can use. So being able to like talk to those people and like to learn from them has been super valuable for me.
have there been any specific events that you attended that maybe were optional, but you felt encouraged to go out and be brave and connect with people you hadn't met before, or anything that you would maybe recommend to students just starting their experience?
I would say attending like the events like these are like the very first step to know what's the market out there is like, what are people more concerned about, and from then you can have your own ideas, and then you know what you're interested in pursuing. And there are other programs in this, like in the province, or like programs at school. For example, any mentorship program. For example, there is one that I am part of, like coordinating and helping. It's called the APEC Access Mentorship Program, where they can connect you with like experts in the field, or like just anyone with diverse career path, and just through talking to them and attending those events, you know what the obstacles are, what their do's and don'ts in those careers. Yeah, just learning about people will also give you an idea of like who you are, and you start to like define yourself as you go.
What area that you're really interested in focusing in on,
Exactly.
that kind of thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
because if you're by yourself, you just sometimes you think I can only do this specific task, and then if that doesn't work out, sometimes you don't know where else to go. So just through talking to other people, I think, and then mentorship programs or any programs that helps with networking, attending networking events in school, in industry, that you can just right now, like you can just find those events online, right? And then just take yourself out there and then go talk to them to get their ideas.
I imagine there, as a student, as a grad student, there's no shortage of work to be done. And so just trying to find that time to pick those events and get yourself out there, right?
And those events can be scary because if you're attending with the idea that I don't know anything, and you're just trying to learn, so that could be very intimidating. But I would say like exposure, it helps. Like it gets better.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been great hearing where you are so far in your progress, and wish you luck with the rest of your studies.
Thank you so much for having me.
Very pleased to welcome Dr. Lindsay Westover, an associate professor in mechanical engineering at the University of Alberta. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I was listening to your presentation earlier, and I'm hearing about the wonderful work that you're doing. So I really want to maybe ask you what one of the problems that you're looking to solve in healthcare is, and why does it matter for everyday patients?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the problems that we're working on is a condition called scoliosis. So scoliosis is a curvature of the spine, and it typically appears in kids and adolescents. And while they're growing, it has the potential to get worse. So the standard to monitor that is to have repeat x-rays while the kids are growing. So what we're trying to do is to reduce the reliance on x-rays for managing scoliosis. So by using a non-invasive approach called surface topography, where we take a scan of the torso surface. And so this would allow patients to have safer and more accessible care for scoliosis.
Less radiation, the better, for sure. Yeah. And so for some of us that are not involved in this technology or the innovation world, How would you explain the technology to those of us listening?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what we do is we use a simple device like an iPad or a phone to sort of scan the body. So what we end up getting is this 3D model. So a nice kind of model that we can work with of the patient's body. And what actually matters to a lot of patients that have scoliosis is kind of how they look. And so we actually look at asymmetry. So humans can perceive asymmetry, and we do this now using a mathematical representation. And so we take that asymmetry of the body, and then we use that to see what's happening at the underlying spine in a way that doesn't require us to actually be able to see the spine. So that helps us to track like outcomes after treatment. So the kids that do exercise therapy or bracing are working really hard, and they want to see the results. And so sometimes that can't be seen that well on an x-ray, but it actually can be seen in the shape of their body and the posture that they're holding. So that's one of the outcomes, and then also just for regular monitoring to make sure that it's not getting worse as they're growing.
And is this something that's widely available now, or still working on getting that to market?
Yeah, so right now it actually is available. So we developed an app that uses either the iPhone or an iPad, and then like a web-based tool to do the analysis. And it's freely available. It's called Backscanner, SCNR. And right now it's free. So we have some users that are mostly physiotherapists, and starting to kind of make it available for patients as well. We are pursuing Health Canada approval and to kind of classify it as a medical device. So once that comes through, then we will launch our paid version so that the clinicians can access it as sort of a subscription through their clinic. But for now, it's free of charge, actually.
Well, great opportunity for those people looking for that support. What was the aha moment that convinced you this idea needed to exist?
Yeah, so people have actually been using surface topography for trying to monitor scoliosis for a long time, for I think over 10 or 20 years. So when we started this work, it came from research. It came out of some collaboration with the Glen Rose Rehab Hospital. And at the time, we had stationary cameras that were like in the room. So they were a couple $100,000 cameras, and we couldn't move them from that room. So it was not very accessible. So when we decided that this actually should exist and used is two things. One, someone from Brazil actually had read one of our research papers based on our old work and said, I want you to make this available. We're now at this point able to scan so easily. They were scanning to make braces anyways, and they wanted to make the asymmetry analysis available. So we thought, okay, this is the time now that scanning technology has progressed so far, and it's so easy to just take a scan with the phone in your pocket. It was the time to kind of make it available.
And so you spoke to this technology being available for a while, but for your specific work, how long has this been taking to get to this point where you are right now?
Yeah, so we started the research probably 2013, 2014, I think was the first papers so people have been using surface topography to acquire the scan for many, many years, but usually relied on like 2D measures or landmarks. And so ours was kind of the first to look at the body as the whole 3D by this asymmetry approach. So our first work kind of came out 2013, 2014. And then, it was 2023 or something when we actually started trying to make it available for people.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit of time then to start gathering feedback from the people that have been using it. I mean, I can imagine how, like you said, they're excited to see the progress that they're making for the patients that are using it. What can you share what you've heard so far in terms of the impact that it's making?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of our users are actually, there's some in Canada, but there's a lot in other places as well. So in Brazil, Chile, Portugal, Spain, lots of places across Europe. And in a lot of those centers, one of the reasons that they're liking it is that they actually don't have good access to x-rays. So some physios are monitoring their patients, and even if they wanted to order an x-ray, they can't. And then others are, they see their patients fairly frequently, and they want they like the sort of the visual representation and the ability to monitor frequently to see how those exercises are impacting that patient's posture. And we're starting a newer collaboration with a big scoliosis clinic in Italy, where they really are mostly interested in the aesthetic measures. So if you wear a brace or you do these exercises, how does that affect your posture? So that's sort of kind of the next direction of where we're trying to go.
Okay, so speaking a lot about the collaborations that you've had so far, how would you say collaborations between researchers, companies, and government move these innovations forward?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's been huge. Like, even in the other areas of work that I do, in every situation, I'm always collaborating. So often collaborating with other engineers, so other experts in different technologies, but mostly collaborating with the clinical space. So in this situation, we've been working with the Edmonton Scoliosis Clinic for years and years, and they have been super supportive of having research and technology embedded in their clinical practice. And without that, I think it can't move forward. So maintaining that connection with the clinicians and then that direct sort of implementation with the patients is really critical for it to be able to actually move forward and get adopted.
And I'm imagining, for our listeners and our viewers right now that are just emerging, looking to get into this type of industry, what kind of advice would you share with them on how to start making those partnerships?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think in terms of making partnerships, I mean, just try to listen and try to start networking and making connections, see what you're interested in and how that can maybe fit with what other people are interested in. And then to be able to actually kind of bring something or make something that people want to use, it's really important to understand where the market is and what are the needs of the people, from both the clinical side as well as kind of a market side, because you want to be making something that people are actually interested in using.
Mm-hmm. And was there ever a time where you just cold call somebody, pick up the phone, or you're looking for people to make those connections?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, for the most part, for us, it's come a lot of through like university connections, and then we're like the hospital's close, and because I've always worked in biomedical engineering, we are quite connected with the orthopedic and surgery space, and then. Yeah, really, actually, when we started this work, a physiotherapist who's a professor in Brazil reached out to us, and then that really did start a big connection with the physios in Brazil, and then sort of kind of going from there, and then going to conferences and meeting people, and then sort of building that network.
Yeah, events like today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Networking opportunities that
Totally.
way. Looking ahead for 5 years, or the next 5 years, what change do you hope your work will create for patients or the healthcare system in general?
Yeah, so for the scoliosis work, so for backscanner, I really do hope that it can be integrated as part of the standard of care. So I want clinicians worldwide to be using it as part of their usual process for early detection as well as for monitoring for scoliosis. And I want it to become part of the patient's journey. So we want to be able to make it available for patients at home so they can, especially ones in rural communities, it can enable remote monitoring so they maybe don't need to travel every time that they need to have a visit with their clinician. So yeah, just becoming kind of part of that standard process.
Well, that sounds fantastic. I really look forward to hearing more about the work that you do. And thank you so much for sharing it with us today.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome, Dr. John Wong. You're an associate professor of clinical neurosciences and radiology at the Cummings School of Medicine, as well as director of cerebrovascular and endovascular neurosurgery, and today's keynote speaker. So thank you so much for spending some time with us on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
And for those who are not able to be here today, I thought we would start with telling us a little bit about your invention, your clinical idea, so we can hear more about that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm a neurosurgeon. I've been in practice for many years now, and we focus on the treatment of patients with brain aneurysms and stroke. A brain aneurysm is a bubble on a blood vessel, a weakness that's typically silent until it bursts. And if it bursts, it can be a disaster. There's pressure in the brain, damage to the brain tissue, can leave a person with permanent deficits such as paralysis, inability to speak. A person can even die. So a brain aneurysm is very serious, and we treat these types of patients on a daily basis throughout my career. How we fix aneurysms nowadays is using very specialized devices, medical devices, called stents. These are mesh metal tubes that a doctor like myself would implant under x-rays with tiny wires and tubes. So in the past, you need to open up the skull. Nowadays, we can go from the inside of the blood vessel, from the inside of the body through a tiny incision to get our stent into the right place and then help reinforce the blood vessel to stop an aneurysm from bleeding. Our field has been revolutionized by these devices called stents. But myself and my co-founder, Dr. Alan Mitha, have always felt that things can be improved. And our idea many years ago was to develop the next generation of stents. And the current stents are made out of metal, so they're permanent and they require blood thinners. We thought about developing, almost naively it seems now, the next generation of stents, skating to where the puck is, so to speak. We felt that the next generation would allow a stent to heal a blood vessel and then dissolve away over time. So we have created the world's first bioabsorbable stent that's made out of polymer rather than metal. So this is an incredible advance that we have first developed as a science project in our laboratory, tested out in the lab, but then reached a point where we felt this project could potentially help patients around the world. And so we have now founded a company called Fluid Biomed, and we're taking the project towards commercialization to help patients around the world with, again, the world's first bioabsorbable stent to treat brain aneurysms.
And as we heard in your keynote, that was quite the involved process. And I think many of our viewers and our listeners are curious about what goes into that process. So maybe for those of us outside the field, could you describe the journey from the early concept to getting to the market-ready technology where you're at today?
Yeah, thanks. Life sciences. Part of the life sciences is medical device, and we are a medical device company. And rightfully so, there are many rules and regulations as to how a medical device is created, manufactured, and utilized. That process, yes, takes many, many years because the safety needs to be there for the patients, right?
Right.
And then that's what we're going through at the current phase. So our project began as scientific research, then has slowly evolved into a product that is at this point pre-commercial. Okay. That means that at this point we are working with regulatory agencies to test the product. So eventually it can be approved for use in the various countries around the world, and at least hopefully for us in Canada and the US. So that's where we're spending a lot of our energies on as a company, refining the product, developing it to the point that we can take it forward and then test it in a large, what we call clinical trial, a study involving human patients in North America.
And at what turning point would you say you realized that investors or other industry partners were interested and ready to support your vision?
Yeah, that's also part of the journey. So part of what we do, obviously, we're refining the product from a technical standpoint. From a company standpoint, the company needs to grow, and for that you need resources. And especially capital resources, financing. For a startup where you may or may not have any revenue, and most startups don't have revenue, that would mean investors, engaging with investors. And I think if you're going to embark on this journey, you have to be able to communicate the vision of what you want to achieve. Our stent is not readily available to people at this point. So you have to be able to communicate and share that vision of what you want, what we want. And that is to have a product that can help patients around the world with brain aneurysms, to work with partners, major medical device manufacturers that would help then distribute that product, manufacture that product. And it's essential to have those people, those firms, those investment firms, whether they're venture capital or private equity, supply those financial resources to a young startup. That is a very challenging part for any young company to communicate, to share that. But if you can find those right partners, and we fortunately have a great syndicate of venture capital firms supporting us, then we're all aligned. They are helping us actively every day move the ball forward and trying to get to the finish line here with the company and its product. But yes, that is, I think, a big part of the role for management, for any startup founder to be comfortable with approaching investors, sharing that vision. And to be honest, many times the answer is no, or you're too early, or come back to us later on when you've reached the next milestone. But again, for us, we've been very lucky to have those investors on our side very early on.
Well, that is very fortunate, and I'm sure that, as a part of this process, and every time you hear from others, that you receive feedback and can continue to refine that process, and potentially could be vulnerable in terms of your work that you're putting into it, but still being open and receptive, I'm sure, is key to that process. So, not starting out your career thinking getting into an innovation type of industry, how did you navigate that shift coming from the academic discovery portion and moving into this journey as a part of your innovation?
Yeah, I think for myself and my co-founder, it has been a gradual evolution from, say, physician, scientist towards innovator, entrepreneur. It's gradual. It's definitely necessary if you feel that you want your startup to grow, because ultimately it needs to be a sustainable and viable business. And for us as what we call management, or as the founders, you have to be very comfortable with that. So there's a completely different set of, it is a very different mindset to think about things that way. There's different language, there's different concepts. I think for, say, if part of the audience for the podcast here, if they're embedded in, say, academia and science and research, yes, and your idea is very valuable, you can definitely take it the same way we have, which is found a company and move forward with it as its leadership and such. But there are other avenues as well. You can partner with other business people. You can be part of a startup, but not necessarily in that lead role. There's a chief technical officer, chief medical officers, chief scientific officers that you would be able to then contribute and see your idea grow. So not everyone needs to do it the way we have. But it does take us very much so an evolution of ourselves and how we look at things, how we approach things, and it may not be an easier journey, that's for sure. Yeah.
I can imagine there's a lot that goes into it, and as a physician, professor, how do you manage that time and dedicate it towards continual progression, as well as the many other components that you have going on in your career?
Yeah, that's another part of that. I don't think we have time to think about to speak about that aspect. But balancing everything. It's the work-life balance aspect, if that's what you're getting at. I think there's different ways to think about this, and when I did my MBA, there was a professor whose full research, full curriculum looked at how do you integrate work, life, personal, family into your world, and the work-life balance, if you imagine, is like a seesaw, and it's pretty much if you use that framework, then something's always going to give, right? Work versus life, meaning, I'm going to spend more time at work. That means my life at home suffers, and vice versa. If you use a different framework where you have overlap, how much can you overlap here so that you can feel that you're contributing not just at home, not just to your community, yourself, but also work, and have as much overlap as possible? I think it's feasible, but don't get me wrong, this is a very busy existence that we have, myself and my co-founder, and to be honest, our partners, our business partners, they expect progress, right? And so you yourself as an entrepreneur have to be at the ready. There are no excuses here. If we succeed, hopefully we'll all reap the benefits. But if we don't succeed, then there's typically just a few people to blame, so to speak. So we know that, and we work very, very hard to make sure, as much as we can, the whole project, the whole business becomes successful.
That's fair. I'm anticipated that I would hear that you dedicate quite a bit of time and navigate that. It sounds like being able to collaborate with so many others can help that process as well, right?
Absolutely.
So thinking about emerging innovators, what advice would you offer trying to move from a research prototype to a scalable, investable product?
I think simply, I think you have to talk to people. In academia, we can be quite isolated overall. Even in medicine, we're experts in our own domain. We know a lot. We have all these degrees and titles. But business is very different. It's all about how broad your network is and how much you connect to people. So I would say that if you think you have a neat idea that you want to share, I don't really see a point to sort of holding that in and being, secretive about it. You've got to talk to others, talk to other like-minded individuals, entrepreneurs, to see what that journey has been like for them. And that's what I found very refreshing and enlightening, that in the business world, people go out and intentionally try to connect, right? Now, sometimes there's not a fit, but then that's okay too. Then you just move on in a different direction. But the more you can talk to others and share your idea, or at least learn from others, is very, very helpful. And so if one does have an idea or a project that they think could be commercialized, there are different resources within the universities, tech transfer offices. Fortunately, University of Alberta, Red Deer College, University of Calgary, they have ample people that you could reach out to sort of begin those kind of conversations and see if that is the right pathway. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes with our various ideas and projects, everyone thinks their baby's the most beautiful baby in the world, and sometimes that baby's not the most beautiful. So it's good to get other opinions and perspectives for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking your time and being generous with sharing your experiences and your knowledge with us here at the podcast as well as the event. I think many people were very keen to learn from you and during this networking activity as well. So,
thank you so much.
I'm welcomed by Dr. Michael Kalos today, professor and department head for biomedical engineering, as well as lead investigator for A-MEDICO. Thank you for joining us here on our on-location recording of the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, so we want to hear from you in terms of speaking for A-MEDICO. From your vantage point, what core healthcare or innovation gaps is A-MEDICO designed to close for Alberta?
So A-MEDICO is really about putting all the pieces together. We have a lot of things happening in Alberta, and we just didn't have a place that they were all together. So we wanted to bring research at the post-secondary institutions. We wanted to bring the polytechnics together, but also with industry and the healthcare system and communities that are underserved by health technologies. And so the gap is really bringing all those pieces together and trying to accelerate the medical device ecosystem in Alberta.
And I think as we've seen here today, there is a lot of excitement, a lot of things happening. And so it's really nice to be here and experience it, see those connections happening.
No, it's fantastic. I learned a lot even about the projects in A-MEDICO that I thought I knew. I learned a lot today, yeah.
Nice. So maybe if you could explain a little bit deeper in terms of A-MEDICO's purpose and the impact to someone with no background in the medtech or engineering industry.
Okay, so what we want to do is make Alberta one voice for medical technologies. And so a lot of research happens in universities, in research labs, doesn't make it out into the real world. And we have a lot of companies that might be struggling with problems they're having or talent they need. And then we have communities that don't have the right healthcare technologies. And what A-MEDICO is really meant to do is to bring those people together so that we are solving the right problems, taking the best of our post-secondaries in research, putting it together with the best of our industry, and creating new health technology solutions for problems of Albertans, Canadians, and beyond.
And what would you say makes Alberta's ecosystem ripe for a program like A-MEDICO? How does it strengthen that innovation pipeline?
This is the most awesome place to do it. So we really have, the government has invested through the post-secondaries in amazing research. We have amazing people here, really smart people, amazing facilities and research facility infrastructure. A healthcare system that is one system. There's clean data, there's united data, and we have a very, I don't know if you want to call it the Western spirit or something like that, but kind of an entrepreneurial, just get stuff done attitude that is really making this exciting, because I think a lot of people are getting on board, and we see a lot of potential now that we've brought these teams together.
And you mentioned the unified healthcare system being quite unique,
yes.
I would say. So
yes.
It presents a lot of opportunities in that aspect, right?
Yep, and including the electronic health records as well. So a lot of the data is not as clean as our data. But if it's a government-run electronic health records, it's really, really valuable for companies here, but also other companies that are looking to do clinical trials here or bring their technologies to Albertans.
So what infrastructure, training, or shared capabilities within A-MEDICO are most critical for moving those technologies forward?
So I think that we have a lot of these research labs in different places, and the way we've structured the funding is that we're getting the researchers to work together so that researchers are not limited by the infrastructure in their own lab. They now have access to facilities across the province, and the students can go and get training from U of A. They can come build something at Red Deer, and then they can go finish their project at U of C, for example. So I think those labs being connected more and being kind of one big lab that we can do this kind of research in is really helping.
Absolutely. And where do you see A-MEDICO having the greatest leverage for the talent development or prototype acceleration or even industry engagement or in clinical adoption?
So I think that our researchers also have a lot of connections to the health system and have a lot of connections to the real problems. I think that's one of the really big advantages here, is that we're not just, I'm an engineer, we're not just engineers running around with a widget trying to go, who wants to use this? What do you want to do? We want to engage with end users right at the beginning, go, this is a problem that needs to be solved. How can we solve it together, and how can we work with you? So I think that's one of the greatest strengths that we have here, is that it really is a super collaborative environment in Alberta, and we're now getting to learn to know the people at the different institutions and finding a lot of these different connections that we hope to keep continuing.
Sounds like having all of those people and with all the knowledge and experience in one place would expedite that process.
100%. So having an event like today where we've got industry and academia together, you can hear, maybe you can't, all of the conversations going on right now, but there are just tons of connection points, and I can't even walk through the room without meeting someone go, oh, we should do this, we should do this. So I think that industry is very willing to work with academia, and they're looking for new ideas, they're looking for sources of talent, and we have those, and just need to put these pieces together. We've got it all here.
I'm excited to hear what comes of it, and maybe that'll be a follow-up episode to see what comes out of this event.
A-MEDICO 2.0.
Exactly. What would you say you're hearing from trainees and early career innovators about how A-MEDICO is changing their trajectory?
So I think it is really fantastic for new career researchers and trainees because they are not just joining one lab. They're working for a supervisor at their institution, but they're also meeting other students from other places that have complementary projects. They're meeting investigators because their team, that's the big project, has someone from different institutions. So they're building a network right from the beginning that will be amazing for their careers moving forward as well as the research they're doing in their degrees.
So a bit of a peer as well as mentorship opportunities outside of their immediate supervisors.
100%, yes.
That's wonderful.
I wish I had this when I was a student coming through. It wasn't quite the same.
Yeah. Well, it's great that you're able to be a part of A-MEDICO and help create that new opportunity moving forward.
Yeah, love doing it, and great support from the government, great support from funders and companies. It's all a partnership. It's all about partnerships.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today and capturing a little bit of the excitement that's happening at today's event.
Awesome. Great to be here. And hopefully everybody goes A-MEDICO, not just A-MEDICO. You got to say it like the Fonz.
Should have started with that.
Yeah, I should have started with that. You can edit that in. A-MEDICO, yeah.
This series is proudly produced by the team at Road 55. Road 55 creates content that connects. For more information, visit our website at road55.ca.